Welcome back to Pharmaceutical Soccer here on 102.5 The Game. This is Valer Shabila, joined with Stephen Robinson. Clay had to step out. Maybe he'll join us back on the fourth segment. Probably not. We'll see.
He disappears a lot. He's never on the show. So
yeah, he's one of those. Anyway, we have a great guest coming up here for this segment. It's a special guest. You might have heard him on Allocation Disorder. You also have read his work on The Athletic, one of the leading U.S. men's national team and MLS writers, reporters. If you're an OG, you might have seen his work for the Chicago Fire, RSL, MLSsoccer.com.
You might have also got really mad at him because he was the one that broke the news that we would be in the Western Conference. So you might also have been really mad at one of the things that he wrote.
I broke that news.
You were the first tweet that I read.
Oh, that was from a press release.
I was
just regurgitating information.
A man who's capable of carrying the piano by himself, Sam Stejskal. Welcome to the pharmacy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. This is the best drugstore in MLS. So.
Is that a quote? Can I? Is that?
Yeah, you can clip that. Do whatever you want.
I'm gonna do a trailer where in trailers they show like different quotes from different reviewers.
Yeah,
like best drugstore in MLS. Well, Sam, let's before we get into the Nashville and MLS and everything like that, and we will get into that, of course. But I'm curious on how you ended up covering soccer. I mean, what happened there?
Oh, what happened? It's a kind of a long story, but I'll try and make it as short as possible. It was my freshman year in college. I was studying journalism because, I don't know, my parents hated me or something, and they let me do that. And it was spring break, and my dad came up to me, and he was like, "What are you doing for a summer internship?" And I was like, "Internship? I'm going to work at Famous Footwear like I do every summer." and he was like, "No." He's like, "Well, you can do that, but you're going to do something else too." And I was like, all right, fine. What am I going to do? And he was like, "Well, you're reading this soccer blog all the time." And it was Soccer by Ives. You guys, Ives Golarsep, you might be familiar with.
I would know that, unfortunately.
He's been covering the national team in MLS for years and years. Great guy. Mm-hmm. And he's based in New Jersey, but he was trying to go kind of more national at the time. This was more than a decade ago now. Yeah. And so I just emailed him out of the blue, and I sent him some clips, and I was like, "Can I cover the Fire for you?" Because I was based in Chicago. And he said, "Sure." And basically one thing led to another from there, and eventually ended up at MLSsoccer.com when they were launching that website way back in the day. I'm old now. And yeah, so that's how I got into it. And then I actually worked in the communications department for Real Salt Lake out of college, and then took a quick hiatus from soccer, and then came back as a reporter. And I've been doing that ever since.
It always brings you back in, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's a drug at the drugstore. So
keeping it on brand.
Backgrounds.
Yeah, that's the brand. That's the brand.
Not an over-the-counter one, clearly.
As a fellow journalism school, public relations specifically graduate myself, I guess my parents hated me as well. So,
much better job prospects in PR than journalism.
Absolutely,
so.
Yeah.
Your parents hated you a lot less than mine hated me.
Yes, for sure. I would assume so, at least. But I mean, you've covered this league for 10 years almost now, and things have changed. The way we break news has changed. Twitter, everything like that has been different. I mean, have you found it any difficult? Have you found any difficulties kind of transitioning to that world, or are you just? Does this come to you naturally?
I mean, I guess there are difficulties. I wasn't really doing too much like breaking news when I was like in the pre-Twitter era, which was like 30 seconds of my life in this job. So it wasn't too big of an issue like transitioning, I guess. Of course, there are some issues sometimes. It's you're on call all the time, which can be tiring. But end of the day, I get to watch and talk about soccer for a living, so it's not really so bad. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think that's a great answer to the question. In all honesty,
it's a good perspective, I think. I personally enjoyed the work that you and Paul put together. Allocation Disorder is my favorite podcast in MLS.
Thank you.
Said it to everybody. A friend of mine, a friend of the show, Jerry, put me on you guys, and ever since I'm like, all right, these are the guys I want to listen to. But the reason I like your show, and I think a lot of people appreciate that, is that it's very authentic and very, when you need to be critical, you are being critical and you are calling people out sometimes. And I think that's very, very, very good for listenership. I think I enjoyed that the most about your show. I guess I'm curious, how do you, because you have all these relationships around the league with GMs, coaches, players, everybody. And how do you keep that relationship, but also kind of go on the show and be critical when needed?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I always try and do, and I can speak for my colleague Paul Tenorio from the show and from The Athletic when I say this, but what we strive to do is be fair. So like basically if there's something that is worth critiquing, well, we better have the perspective from both sides, right? We better have as much information as we possibly can, because a lot of times in a lot of these situations, right, we don't know the whole story. Like even as reporters, right, we don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. So you have to kind of account for that, and you have to try and get as much of that information as possible. So if you are going to make a judgment, it can be as accurate and as appropriate and as fair as possible. So I think that's part of it. And I think we've built up a pretty solid reputation of doing it for the most part. And so people know when they deal with us that we're going to be fair. Sometimes that means, if you're struggling, that you're going to be criticized. And to give credit, most people around the league are professional about it. They don't take things personally for the most part. So it's not really too big of a problem.
All right. Well, that's good that people, I guess, around the league take that and kind of accept that and move on. I guess it's hard to argue if they are not doing very well, because it's shown on the table and shown at every match.
Exactly.
So like, well, if your coach didn't work out, your coach didn't work out. You can't really tell me they did. But kind of moving on from that and kind of looking at it for more recent. I'm sure you've watched a lot of decision days, and I'm sure you've enjoyed some of them with RSL and with Chicago back in the day. But
decision day wasn't quite decision day back then, because this is like newer. Yeah. They only started this format, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. So.
I guess the last game of the season is what I meant.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
I wasn't.
Here I am correcting you over a technicality.
Right.
No, you need to. That needs to be had. Unfortunately, he needs to learn. It's okay.
I'm that guy.
Yeah. Journalism people. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No wonder your parents want you. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, right?
So where? Stop it. We want him back.
So my question, decision day 2021, where does it rank? How do you feel about it? Good, bad?
Man.
Where are you?
Where does it rank? Honestly, I can't rank it because I like my brain is just so clogged right now. I can't remember any past decision days. It was a good one. The East wasn't like crazy drama.
It wasn't as interesting as I thought it was going to be going into it, with like a 3-point swing between like third place and a possible playoff. It wasn't as crazy as we thought it was going to be.
No, things stayed pretty locked. I mean, the one thing that got exciting was the Nashville, New York game towards the end. The fact that Orlando beat Montreal and then there was a red card and Montreal went down a man after they dropped a goal, that kind of took some of the sting out of it, I think.
Right.
And the fact that DC, needed a lot of help even with the win as well. But what was it? If New York conceded at the end, they would have been out.
Yeah.
So that was, and Nashville had some chances.
Right.
So that was some good drama. And the West was great. The West was crazy. That Minnesota LA game was wild. I mean, the RSL Kansas City, that game itself wasn't particularly exciting, but the very end was as dramatic as it gets. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. Like this is the best time of year. MLS, sometimes it's a struggle in the summer, like when the stakes don't feel very high and it's hot,
right,
and everyone's playing their 10th game in like 30 days and like guys are hurt and you're getting rotated lineups. But this time of year, with the end of the regular season and the playoffs, when the stakes are really high, some crazy stuff happens and it's really fun.
Yeah, we were definitely used to that midsummer slog when you're going through every single show or podcast being like, well, at least we got a point.
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
did that many times through the
Yeah.
summer.
18 times.
Yeah, specifically, we were prescribing a lot of other games for our patients, as we call it.
Oh my God, we need to stop. We absolutely need to stop.
Our actual Patreon like tier is called Patient Plus, so or Pharma Plus. So there you go. But
That's great.
I mean, I think the SKC fans on Twitter will let you know that game also had a very obvious handball. That
yeah,
so
I mean,
you missed that. I just want to let you know.
I did miss that in my recap.
In case
they're
SKC
not wrong.
Fans are just
They're
listening
not
to this
wrong.
random Nashville show,
Yeah.
just to let you know that you missed something.
Peter Vermes is listening all the time, just so you guys know.
Oh, I believe
Got to
it.
be careful.
100% believe it.
Absolutely. So I think it would be kind of weird to have a show covering MLS and not mention that the great Wando and everything that he's done for this league, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how do you feel about that? Where are you? Like, can somebody like Wando happen in 2021 or 2022 MLS? Like, is that like with the pathways
can
we
they? Sure. Can they? Anything's possible. Never say never, right? But like, no, not realistically. But to be fair, it wasn't realistic when Wando happened when he did happen, like it was like he didn't really play until he was like 26. He was a bench player for the Quakes and then the Dynamo, and then he went back to the Quakes and he finally got some time and he couldn't stop scoring. But so yeah, it's going to be really, really hard. For one, I was actually talking about this with somebody the other day. For one thing, a lot of guys are coming into the league now via academies, and a lot of those guys are coming in at 18, 19 years old. And if you have an 18, 19-year-old who's scoring a bunch of goals at 18, 19, well, they're not going to stay in MLS very long, chances are, right? And if you have a college player that comes in and kind of does it at 24, 25, like they might not be staying in MLS all that long either. The odds are a little bit higher perhaps, but the money is such now that, teams are spending a lot of money on attacking players and strikers specifically. So it's harder for those homegrown and domestic players to break through in that position to begin with than it was when Wando was coming up. So there are a ton of factors stacked against it, on top of the obvious that like these rags to riches, like Chico State, not even Division I soccer, like those stories don't happen in MLS in 2000 or 2010. Right. And now it's less and less likely. But what an amazing career that guy had. I wrote a story on him with a couple colleagues a year ago when it looked like he might retire last year. And that was some of the most fun I've ever had reporting and writing a story, because basically all we did was just talk to a bunch of his teammates, current and former, and just like talk to me about Wando. And they all love him. They have amazing stories. He's just like very much like kind of an everyman type of dude.
I love that.
He doesn't look physically impressive. And so these guys who are some of his best friends are like crapping on him. They're like, man, this guy's incredible. Just an unbelievable finisher. But like in the gym, he's a complete joke. Like he can't even stretch. Like they're like, he can barely touch his knees, let alone his toes. Ask him to do a pull-up, he can't do it. He doesn't warm up. He doesn't cool down. And then I'm talking to Wando and I'm asking about all this crap that his teammates. And he's like, yeah, man. It's like, I've always said, if you don't have any muscles, you can't pull any muscles. So there you go.
I do remember that story, actually. I'm fairly.
Also, why do I feel like you're describing Dax McCarty in that same sentiment as you're talking about? Why do I feel like Dax is also that guy?
No, Dax.
Why I feel like that?
Dax athletic though.
He is athletic. And Wando is like an elite runner, right? Like he doesn't get tired. Like his endurance is ridiculous, right? So he's a good athlete too. but he also
stop.
But he also does things like go to an Oakland Raiders game and be honored before kickoff and, kick a 45-yard field goal in running shoes after he drank 6 beers in the parking lot.
That's the story that I remember the most about it. Yeah.
That's an actual story that was told to us for this story. So that's that's kind of Wando, So lovable guy, incredible goal scorer, incredible career. And then obviously there's the Belgium miss, which a lot of people like to point to. Very unfortunate for him, for the national team. But, he had a lot of amazing, amazing things. That's one moment. So
don't worry. There's nobody on this show that really likes to point to that miss ever in a million years. Nobody ever.
It's Steven. It's just Steven. No one else. It's like we all moved on except Steven. He's
not as easy as of a chance as you remember.
Probably. No, it is way more difficult than my dumb self from my TV screen sitting drinking those 5 beers. Self would be completely.
I mean, maybe if Wando had drank 5 beers, he would have made that.
He would have gone. Maybe. Maybe. I mean, obviously, I remember that story that you're talking about, and I would recommend it to everybody. Not just that story, but a lot of the work you and Paul do, and a lot of the athletic stuff. I think it's pretty good stuff. Even the weird ones. I think the weird ones are more fun with the other guys who write for the Athletic. We all know who we're talking about, and Nashville native, of course, and Pablo. But I'm gonna move on here because I think we can sit down here and talk about your stories for another 20 minutes and about Wando for 20 minutes, honestly.
Yeah.
But Wando, I think for the sake of our show, we should probably do some Nashville stuff. This interview will probably not all make it to the radio, but some of the stuff will kind of go to our Patreon, to our podcasts. But I mean, what are the thoughts from you as a national writer, national media? We're always complaining about Nashville not getting enough kind of credit in the national media. Two years in the league, two times making the playoffs, not really spending the Atlanta or the LAFC money. What do national media folks think about this Nashville team?
It's funny. And a lot of people say, oh, Nashville, they don't get enough credit for what they've done. And last year, this time, I totally believe that was true. But I feel like it's sort of become one of those things where people are saying it's underrated so much that it's no longer underrated. And that's not to take away from anything that they've done. They've done a really nice job, right? They constructed a team that didn't really blow anyone away aesthetically last year, right? But they were strong in the spine and they were tough to play against and they ground out results. And this year they took that foundation and they added on, right? And it's sort of exactly how you would dream it up if you are kind of a lower budget, although they're not quite low budget. They're more middle class at this point. It's exactly how you draw it up if you're that type of expansion team. And I think they've done an excellent job. And I think they do deserve a ton of credit. And I think at this point they're getting a lot of it from national folks.
And just, I mean, we had Susanna Collins on the show at one point, kind of, she's been through a lot of the, historical moments through Nationals. And she asked Dax the same question, kind of in a sense of, how do you feel about the kind of underrated nature? And he's just like, I don't really look at it in that standpoint, but I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we actually kind of like being in this situation. But I'm still wondering, with so many people, talking about Nashville being in this sentiment. I mean, I would love to look at early season predictions. Did anybody ever think that we'd be at 3rd place in the East right now? I think there's a lot to talk about in that standpoint. And actually, it's starting to get to that point.
I'm curious. You guys, I'm going to look this up.
Yeah, Sammy, go ahead.
Right now. So if you guys want to do me a favor and fill for a second while I pull this up, that would be incredible.
Yeah, the MLS guys, I know some of them had us in the playoffs. I think, from the MLS soccer folks. So some had us, finishing 8th, maybe 9th, but a lot of them did have us in the playoffs after that impressive first season. I'll be curious what Sam Stejskal had us, So
I had 8th. There we go. Yeah. I was gonna say I'm pretty sure I picked Nashville for the playoffs, but I did not. So there you go.
We don't hold it against you.
No, the team's been excellent. I still have to vote for my best 11, which I've got a whole 3 hours left to do it now. Should probably get on that. But Walker Zimmerman will be in there for me. Hani Mukhtar will be in there for me. It's interesting though, because the narrative that you hear from Nashville is sort of like, we're doing this on a budget. We're balling on a budget. They have some highly paid players. They don't really do anything, with the exception of Mukhtar. But you look at Ake Loba, he is not it's early and he could be great next year, right? I'm not writing him off by any means, but he hasn't really done much so far, right? Cadiz hasn't really done a ton. Last year was probably more effective than he was this year, right? And you have CJ Sapong, who you sign as a depth piece, right? And he's out here killing it. So it's credit to them for getting a lot of those types of moves spot on correct. But also it's okay, there is some money spent here and it hasn't really hit yet. So I'm curious what it looks like if those guys like Loba maybe, have a little bit of time to get settled, know the league, get their feet under them, and they start to click next season. Much like, sort of like it happened with Mukhtar from 20 to 21.
And I think that's the hope for Ake. I mean, for Jonder, his loan is up in January. I don't think Nashville's bringing him back, so it's not as important. But for Ake, that's certainly the hope, is that his second year will be like Hani's second year. But just going off what you're saying, there are two players on Nashville's top 5, probably highest paid players that aren't even with the team. David Akam is on loan, and Miguel Nazarit as well is on loan. Miguel Nazarit gets paid almost $1 million a year. He hasn't played a minute for Nashville or any other team this year. So there's that for you. And then David Akam is in Sweden on loan, and I don't think he's playing that much last time I checked. So there are some misses, I think, there within the higher paid players. But overall, I think Mike Jacobs knows how to get just the best out of those draft picks, those mechanics that are very weird and very MLS.
Mike Jacobs does an incredible job at like acquiring the MLS guy, right? And that's really, really important, especially if you're going to kind of do it on a budget. Look at Colorado. It's a similar story, right? Yeah. That team spends less than Nashville does, right? But they are able to kind of use the allocation money that they don't have to use on buying down salaries to go trade for players.
Absolutely.
From MLS.
Yeah. And they use it as like for one in Nashville that is currently crushing it in Colorado right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Nashville's done that too, right? Walker Zimmerman being a good example, probably the best example of that. Although Dax McCarty was a trade for nothing.
Like 150, 150. Yeah, that's amazing.
Godoy was a trade that I was critical of at the time. I thought they overpaid for him massively.
I think a lot of people were critical of that one at the time.
And he's worked out tremendously. So they've done a lot of the same things, and Mike Jacobs really excelled there. And every GM misses, every team misses on signings. No one has 100% hit rate. So I'm not like trying to take shots here or anything like that.
No, and I think
he and the club have a much better hit rate than most.
Right.
I think so too, especially within MLS and all that. But Colorado, and again, amazing story. I don't think anybody give them a chance. I would love to go see where people rank them, or our RSL or any of those kind of weirder teams to kind of make it. RSL without an owner or anything like that. Incredible stories. That's why decision day is fun, right?
Exactly.
But I don't want to keep you for much longer, Sam. Give me your best prediction on where you think NSC will finish this year in this playoffs. Facing Orlando first, obviously.
Orlando first. I mean, that's gonna be tight.
Yeah,
right.
Especially with what happened.
Started a little bit of a rivalry already with the call at the end. Obviously, a little bit of back and forth.
I mean, I don't think anyone would be surprised if it ended in a draw and went to extra time. Right. That's probably the most likely scenario. Right.
If I was a betting man, I would.
I'm excited to see the betting odds for a draw. Actually,
I think Nashville gets through at home. If this was a road game, I think I would pick Orlando. But I think Nashville being at home, I think they get through. They're a tough team to beat. Like, that's the thing. Nashville doesn't lose.
Yep. So, fewest losses, tied the record for fewest losses in history.
So, that's a really good attribute to have in a single elimination playoff format. So I like their chances to kind of make some noise. I don't have the bracket right here in front of me.
It would
3-6.
Red
they would
Bulls
then play the two.
Red Bulls or Philly.
Red Bulls or Philly. Yeah, I mean, I would like their odds in that game too.
Yep.
Right.
Especially if they're home.
If they're playing the Red Bulls, that would be a pick to go through. Philly is a solid team as well, similar style to the Red Bulls. But I think that would be a very even game, and I think you could very easily see Nashville in the Eastern Conference Final. No question about it. And then they're one of the few teams that have a little bit of success against the Revs this year. So who knows?
Defeated against the Revs. So.
And then I want to keep it quick because you brought it up of needing to submit your best 11 very soon. Who are you putting as MVP on that?
I'm torn. I haven't decided yet. I have to do that right after I hang up on this call. I think
I'm glad that you got on a call with us then.
I think today's been a weird day. I think it'll be Heel or Mukhtar. I think it'll be one of those two.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You guys have a case for me, one way or the other?
I mean, look at most goals and most assists, most improved, most valuable to their team. high finishing. When Hill was out for New York, I mean for New England, sorry, they still won. When Mukhtar is much more, I think he's much more important to Nashville than Hill is it is for New York. But I wouldn't be mad at you if you put Carlos Hill. I think that is a good pick. I think personally Mukhtar has a really good argument against him. I don't think any of the other players can get close to those two, even if they scored more goals. They're just not as important in terms of build-up play and just being a complete player. I think that's kind of my case. Is that I understand the Carlos Hill picks, but I don't really understand anybody outside of that other than Mukhtar.
Yeah, I think those two are clearly the top, right? So
my case is a little bit more direct. Of like, Sam, you should just do it. Just
all right. Well, that's compelling. I have to
it.
take that into consideration.
I think you should.
I mean, I'm glad you're not one of those where it's like, no, Mukhtar has no chance. And I'm like, come on, like he has the most goals and assists combined in the league, you know?
Can I just say, I don't understand these people that vote before the season ends.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sam. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like you have to wait for like it'd be
has to be over.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Wait for the season to end.
All right. Lastly, Sam, before we let you go, give me your who's gonna play in the MLS Cup and who's gonna win it. You're so good at predicting.
I know. I'm so bad at them. The ones I made preseason were so bad.
Well, then don't put Nashville there.
I literally had LAFC beating Columbus Crew in MLS Cup. I have not looked at this yet, so I don't know. Seattle will make it because they always make it.
Of course
and actually, I'm changing my pick. Colorado will make it.
Ooh.
And they will play New England in New England.
So you're opting out of the Gary Smith derby of Colorado versus Nashville MLS.
Oh, wow.
Final.
Well, when you put it like that, all right, let's bring it back.
No, like you said
it's all about the storylines.
Don't do this. New England, got it.
This is not my final pick for the record.
Okay.
But this is my first of many picks. And then if any of them are right, then I will get to claim that I'm a genius.
Yeah, just clip it.
Yeah.
Well, Sam Stejskal, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, everybody who's listening to this show, go listen to Allocation Disorder. Go read his work on The Athletic. It's definitely the leading reporter for MLS and definitely the U.S. men's national team, which we didn't get to talk about today because this is a Nashville show, but I'm sure Sam will be covering a lot of that. So thank you again, Sam, and we appreciate the time.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and you're far too kind, but I appreciate it.